Hi, so today we're going to be going over a MacBook Air, and this MacBook Air appears to be dead. And like just about every MacBook that comes into the store, this is another one that yet has not had anything spilled on it. So we're just going to take a look over to this machine, and we're going to see if that looks like truth. And let's see what we have here. So let's just get the microscope camera and focus, and let's just take a look at the landscape. Before we open the schematics and get some measuring and things like that, it's nice to just take a look at the landscape and get a guess as to what areas we are going to have to look at and what areas we are going to have to focus on should we decide that it is going to require a schematic and looking at it. So over here you can tell that the backlight fuse has some not water on it. That's definitely not water, not Coca-Cola, not piss, not any of those liquids. But we're going to continue onwards because the thing is this machine itself is actually dead, so it doesn't power on at all. So that is a problem. So over here we can see that there is a little bit of junk by the SMC reset circuitry. Now, the way the SMC reset circuit works is pretty simple. It's a little complicated if you're new to it and you're trying to guess what it is, but it's pretty simple. This machine is going to turn on first when PP3V42. That's the first power rail that comes in the computer. So the first power rail that shows up is PP3V42. Now this chip over here, which is the system management controller, controls turning on, turning off, all different sensors, recognition of the battery. That chip turns on from PP3V42, and it needs exactly 3.42 volts. But the problem that we run into is that it takes about, just like maybe 100 milliseconds for PP3V42 to become exactly PP3V42. And in that time, this is going to try to boot. And if it tries to boot while it's 4 volts or 2 volts or 1 volt, it's going to wind up crashing the same way any type of computer is if you provide the wrong voltage to its processor. So this sits in between the PP3V42 power supply, which is over here with no water on it, and the SMC chip, which is over here. And the idea is that this chip is going to wait about a quarter of a second or so before it tells the SMC that it's okay to turn on. So it's going to wait. This chip here is going to wait until this chip here has created exactly 3.42 volts. And once this chip here has created exactly 3.42 volts, this chip will then tell the SMC, okay, you may now turn on now. And it keeps the SMC from screwing up and crashing. So this is the PP3V42 circuit. It's going to take either the 8 volts from the battery or the 16 volts from the charger, and it's going to turn it into 3.42 volts. So you see over here you have your separate inputs. So I forget which is which, to be honest with you. I believe this is going to be from PP bus G. This is from PP bus G3 hot over here, which is the battery voltage, and this one is from the charger, and they're both going to go through this diode. And the idea here is very simple. You don't want the voltage from the charger to go directly to the battery or for the battery to try and charge a charger. So the idea here is we put this diode here so that they both can't come through at the same time. So you have two separate entrances, but one exit, and this cannot go up to there, and this cannot go directly here. Because again, you don't want to send 18 volts directly to the battery. That's not a good thing. So this is a diode sitting here. Then this is going to be a capacitor on the input, which is going to act like a battery, and that's going to store the voltage from the charger or the battery, and that is the PP3V42 regulator over here. This is going to be some output capacitors on that. Actually, I can't even tell if it's output or input, to be honest with you. And this is going to be the coil that's going to smooth and straighten everything out. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is we're just going to clean our landscape a little bit. So first thing we do is we're just going to add a little bit of liquid flux over here, and after we add in some nice liquid flux, I'm going to put on the air fume extractor because there's really no desire to breathe any of that in. That's not going to do us any good. And we're just going to start heating the board a little in that area. And we're just going to want to gently clean away any of that junk, because that junk is not going to do us any good. We're just going to do a little bit of this. Now keep in mind, if there's any specific solder joint that has broken or cracked, like let's say something under this diode, we really don't want to toss this directly into the ultrasonic cleaner, because that little solder joint will be tossed away. Not only will it be tossed away, but the actual dirt, which is the evidence of where that broken solder joint is, will also be tossed away, and then we'll be stuck going under every single chip, manually torturing ourselves for a solution when the solution may actually be fixed right in front of us simply by giving it a light reflow with some flux and some solder, which is what I'm going to do right now. We're just going to go over some of these areas. And let's go over that little backlight fuse area over there. We're going to go over that little backlight fuse area, and we're going to just give it a little bit of flux and a little bit of hot air, and we're going to see what happens from there. And we'll see if this fixes it. Now, of course, this is definitely going to get thrown into an ultrasonic cleaner afterwards. This is not an acceptable form of finished cleaning, but it is a small portion of what we do just to get things started. The way I want you to see this is less like diagnosing and repairing circuitry at first, and more like preserving an expensive old piece of artwork. So let's say you take a piece of artwork from the 1600s or the 1200s. There are certain things you're going to want to do to try and preserve the artwork so that it doesn't get damaged. And that's the kind of attitude that we're taking over here. Whereas if you're working with some tapes of a session from the 1960s, there are certain ways that you treat things. You're not going to just run in there and run amok and destroy things. And be nice and careful. So the first thing that we're going to want to do now is see if we've made any progress. Actually, first, we really should give that SMC reset area just a little bit of attention here. And if you want to be able to tell what these things do, you will have to Google and you will have to find your own schematic and board views. I do not provide those. You will find them on Google. You will find people that have them on Google. But yeah, don't even get me started with that, because everybody likes to ask, "Hey Lewis, I want a schematic. Hey Lewis, I want a board view." And say, "Yeah, I've never distributed those and I never will." So we're not going to do any of that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get started. I'm just going to turn off all this loud stuff, and I'm kind of curious is this microphone blocking out more than the other or not. I figured I might as well get the headpiece to it. Like, I wouldn't buy this microphone at the price of a DPA Define just to have it, but I already had it, so I figure I might as well buy this damn $87 headpiece for it, since I already own it. So now I'm going to plug it in, and as you can see, the fan spins, which is something that wasn't happening before, which means that all it took was to just reconnect those basic solder joints that were a little bit corroded away, and now we're going to put it in the ultrasonic cleaner and we'll be fine. Now, there's one capacitor there that's going to need replacing, and there is a backlight fuse that I don't particularly think I should keep that backlight fuse in, but that's it. It's not, I just want you to kind of follow along these areas, and if you follow along where the corrosion is, you'll get an idea of what's going on. And what I like to do is I like to go, okay, well, that's corroded and it doesn't turn on. That's corroded and doesn't have a green light. That's corroded and I don't see a light in the screen. That's corroded and it doesn't chime. So what I do is I look at those circuit areas in the schematic and the board view, and then I start associating the specific issue that I had on the motherboard with whatever it is that I saw in the schematic. So then I know, okay, that's what this does. That's what this does. That's what this does. And it's a really, really nice, natural, and organic way to kind of learn what specific things do. And it works for me, and I hope it works for you. And it's something that I'm trying to use right now as I'm trying to learn some programming languages. So what I'm doing is I'm taking source code to really, really, really basic programs, and then I'm deleting things, or I'm commenting things out, or I'm changing things, and then I want to see how that affects the actual program, so that not only can I learn from one angle by reading, here's what this type of code does, here's what that type of code does, but then I can also see the effect in the real world when I delete that stuff away. And it's a really interesting way of learning. It's a really hands-on way of learning and engaging a different part of your brain by approaching the problem sideways. And it's something that I use here, something that I use in other aspects of life, and it's something that you may want to consider doing. That's it for today, and as always, I hope you learned something. And just remember, don't toss the board into the ultrasonic cleaner before doing something like this. Not only are you going to wash away little pieces of broken solder that can easily and properly be reconnected with a quality flux and a little bit of hot air, but you're also going to be washing away your hints, so you're not even going to know where you need to go to find that stuff when you're done, and that's going to be a real shame.